Good morning, and welcome to X-Ray in the Morning, the show of shows.
Yay!
Here's the latest weather report. Rain and cooler.
Time for news and commentary. I'm Jefferson Smith.
Good news, everyone!
Nerd alert! What did we learn this morning?
I learned that there's a storm coming.
You did learn that.
It's like a bowl of grape nuts for your mind.
Sleepy, it's rainy, it's dark, but feeling good.
Here we are. It is Friday, January 25th, and you've got TJ and Emily coming at you with the news this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, TJ. How are you?
I'm not doing so bad.
Not
It's a Friday.
It's Friday. It is almost the weekend.
And it was a short week, so we really don't have any excuse for, not getting to the finish line this week.
That's true. There's lots trending today. I was just looking at the Twitter to see what's up around the world, what's trending in Portland. We've got news about Roger Stone. We've even got a hashtag that's moving through called Mueller time.
It's Mueller time.
It's
I'll
Mueller.
drink to that.
It's Mueller time. It's also hashtag Indictment Friday.
Oh, I like that. Did you know we drink coffee here on the air?
Sometimes. So let's jump into some top stories. There are dueling plans to reopen the government, but both have failed in the Senate. Senate Democrats blocked a White House-backed plan to end the 34-day partial government shutdown. Yesterday, the Senate turned the plan down in a 50-47 vote. Measure would have provided $5.7 billion for President Trump's proposed wall on the Mexican border. The measure also would have let deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, or Dreamers recipients, and some temporary protected status holders apply for a 3-year extension of protected status. Would also place new restrictions on asylum seekers, meaning that folks who are interested in applying for asylum would have to do that from their home country. In a surprising move, GOP Senators Mike Lee from Utah and Tom Cotton from Arkansas voted against Trump's plan. A Democrat-backed clean funding bill failed to get 60 votes to pass as well. The vote count for the Democrats' proposal was 52-44. Proposal would have funded the government through February 8th. Democrats have said they will not negotiate on border funding until the government is reopened.
No slats for you, booby.
TJ, what do you think's when are we gonna reopen the government? Do you know? Can you tell the people? Because we want to know.
The 29th. It's anyone's guess. I don't know where we're moving. The plans, the things that they're starting to throw up now as ideas. We'll give you DACA, which you basically already have from the courts. We've got another story about making a down payment, or some sort of promissory note. You can see where the trend is. Certainly, publicly, his poll numbers are taking a dive. He's starting to lose a couple of senators. I don't think it's that surprising that there were two at least who are starting to probably feel the weight of the phone calls in their own offices. But it's fairly unpredictable. I think probably what will happen is we'll move into the emergency phase, and I assume that with that out of the way, or with the wall part being dispensed with and then taken up in the courts, that we would have an opportunity to then restart the government without further issues. But I don't know if that's what will happen. I have a feeling he's probably headed for the executive idea, but since this is a clear loser, yeah. We'll get to that, actually. In fact, do you want to talk about it now, or do you have something?
Well, I was also just going to add that, yesterday we also saw an uncharacteristic move from President Trump, and that he backed down with regard to the State of the Union address, because we were in a sort of a Twitter battle or a letter battle with Nancy Pelosi first saying that it didn't seem to work for the country to have the State of the Union address happen while we have a government shutdown. There were security concerns, and it just didn't feel like the right thing to do. And then President Trump said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And then Nancy Pelosi came back to say, nope, it's not the right thing to do. And now we've seen that President Trump has said, yes, we will postpone the State of the Union address and push that to after the government reopens. So maybe that's a sign that President Trump is willing to negotiate. Surely he's thinking about 2020 and his ability to get reelected if this goes on much longer.
We'll talk about it when the story comes, but I think more likely on that one, he just realized he had no path to getting what he wanted. He still may have some vain hope that he thinks he can get his border funding through other measures. There's all kinds of workarounds, but for the State of the Union, there really was no other way around it. She was the one who could approve it, and she wasn't going to do it.
Yep, that's true.
So I think he's probably headed down the national emergency path, and that's our next story. The White House is preparing a draft national emergency order for the wall, the slats, the barrier, whatever you'd like to call it, or as Senator Gardner called it from Colorado, the medieval wall several times in his interesting testimony against Senator Cruz, which you don't often see in the Senate, is two senators directly attacking each other. Anyhow, the White House is preparing a draft proclamation for the president to declare a national emergency along the southern border. They've identified more than $7 billion in potential funds for his signature border wall. Trump, will he have his signature on it? That's the kind of thing that would say Trump wall, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I have a feeling.
It's an interesting visual.
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, he's probably going to brand it. Trump has not ruled out his using his authority to declare a national emergency and to direct the Defense Department to construct a border wall. The White House is attempting to move forward with alternative plans that would bypass Congress. A draft of the proclamation obtained by CNN reads, quote, "The massive amount of aliens who unlawfully enter the United States each day is a direct threat," isn't it R? "Is a direct threat to the safety and security of our nation and constitutes a national emergency," end quote. The draft was updated as recently as last week. The president has disapproved of short-term measures and said, quote, "I have other alternatives if I have to, and I'll use those alternatives if I have to," end quote. The alternatives refer to $681 million from Treasury forfeiture funds, $3.6 billion in military construction, $3 billion in Pentagon Civil Works funds, and $200 million in Department of Homeland Security funds. If the proclamation is made, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would be deployed to construct the wall. Some of that money is actually disaster relief funds, so it's hurricane restoration funds that they would be using to instead build the wall in some of the same states where that money is being spent for disaster relief. It's crazy. Some of the wall could be built on private property and would therefore require the administration to seize the land, which is permitted if it's for public use, but would very likely engage court battles. You ready for an emergency?
This is something, it's obviously it unlocks his overwhelming desire to have the wall. But is it a true emergency? I mean, we've seen many media sources stating that it is not. When you look across the trends, we do not have a crisis at the southern border. Unfortunately,
I think federally, like we have in Oregon, we've sort of abused the term emergency to the point where it's become bipartisanly meaningless. And I think we have 20 current national emergency policies in effect now, I read somewhere yesterday. So the declaration is simply the mechanism to attempt to move money around Congress, but I think it's not a winner for Trump because either way, if he wins, it will be long after he's out of office. The process of eminent domain in a good situation takes about a year, and that's if you don't even fight it. And there's definitely going to be people fighting the capture of their land and ranches along the border. I guess if we're talking about a re-election of Trump, he theoretically could still be in office to see the cases resolved and to see the wall begun. But and the idea that you can fund something without Congress's approval is also something that will be brought directly into court. So I kind of feel like, bring it. This is not a good bluff for you. It's kind of like the State of the Union. There are not very many paths to success with this option. Certainly, when you don't really have an emergency and everyone knows it.
Absolutely. And, with your statement about their 20 national emergency policies in place, these are things that come after like 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina. It gives the federal government, gives the president the opportunity to shift funding around within the existing approved budget.
Right.
So, also the fact that, he has already, quote unquote, found this money. That's not to say that the what you just said, the 3.6 billion in military construction, it's the 3 billion in Pentagon Civil Works funds. That could potentially hurt those budgets,
For sure.
moving those things around. But he's found the money. It would move him forward. And then this, your comment about the judiciary, this is something I continue to watch, because as we have the Trump administration and a Republican-controlled Senate in office longer, the more judges that we have confirmed. And I'm always concerned about what the judiciary is going to do in these situations.
They've been uneven, but so far, justice has been on our side collectively, if we're talking about, our side being the side that's not Trump's side.
Right.
It struck me interestingly that Representative Cortez got so much flack about saying, well, why can't we, there's all this money that's missing in the Pentagon. Think of what we could do with that money. And people said, well, that money doesn't actually exist. You can't spend it. But, in a sense, Trump's doing the same thing. He's saying, well, this money's been allocated for something else, but, we can use it here.
Just move it over. Just shift it a little bit.
Just
And
a
so
little
then the question is, if the national emergency goes through, he's able to shift the dollars to get his $6 billion for the wall, the slats, the barrier, the whatever the term of the day is. Will this then calm him down in a way where he will be willing to reopen the government and relieve the incredible pressure that's happening, not only with the folks who are working and not receiving their paychecks, but also the furloughed workers and all the businesses that are around them. The longer this goes on, the bigger the impact on our country. I was just reading from, I believe it was one of the major airlines, that the longer this goes on, the longer it's going to take for that airline infrastructure to rebuild. This has impact that is going to last way beyond the reopening of the shutdown.
I believe so. We'll take a quick break and come back with Talk Media News.